first, we just saw Stephen Miles and David Crisafulli go head-to-head in their last fiery debate as they try to win over undecided voters. This was a crucial test, with Queenslanders heading to the polls in just 4 days. Neither leader could afford a slip-up. Now, the polls have for some time predicted a landslide win for the LNP, but Labor just this week is closing the gap. As I said, we've got a lot coming up on the show tonight. I'm going to tell you about a secret visit Peter Dutton made today in Sydney. But first, let's bring in former Queensland Premier Campbell Newman and former Queensland Labor State Secretary Cameron Milner. Now, as I just said, polls have shown a tightening, especially in the southeast. So this debate really was important. Campbell, who did you give it to and why?
Look, I thought it was even Stevens tonight. But as I said for the first debate, I think Miles has a more comfortable, albeit, and this is a funny thing to say, awkward persona, but it is the sort of the daggy dad stuff. David is far more intense, and it's a bit like the famous 1960 debate in the US presidential elections between Nixon and Kennedy. If you just had the audio, I think David, is quite compelling. But when you see it on the screen, I think Miles looks, more approachable, and I think Australians like approachable leaders. So I think the other thing that happened tonight is I think David Crisafulli skated very close to the edge on the abortion issue earlier in the debate. And then finally, he gave later on, in answer to Miles' direct question, he went, yes, he does support a woman's right to choose. Now, if he'd said that, say, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, perhaps they wouldn't have been hurt so much.
132 times David Crisafulli has failed to answer the question about whether he does support a women's right to choose. This was a big issue, not only in the debate, but it has been in the Queensland state election campaign. Let's have a look at one of the most heated moments on this very issue.
There'll be no changes to abortion law, and I want Queenslanders to hear that directly from me.
Can anyone tell from David's answer just then what he thinks about this issue? I mean, this is a really important issue.
I think it shouldn't change.
Everyone knows.
I think it shouldn't change. The laws should remain the same.
Will you have a conscience vote?
The laws will remain the same.
What is your view?
There will be no change.
Think?
So the scare campaign will continue, but you need to hear it directly from me. Well,
let me answer the question.
The scare campaign will continue, but it's not happening.
Give a straight answer.
OK. There will be no change. None at all.
Are you pro-choice or not?
There will be no change. The legislation is there and women will have access to that legislation. That gives women the right to choose.
Cameron Milner, this has become such a big issue. Clearly, Stephen Miles kept bringing it up in the debate. David Crisafulli, unequivocal that there'd be no change to the law, but he had been reluctant to give his own personal viewpoint. Has this been a scare campaign, in your opinion?
Oh, look, I think it's a campaign to a small group of people who are motivated by this particular issue. Cost of living overwhelmingly is the issue for Queenslanders are going to vote on. Youth crime, housing supply. So David Crisafulli's been campaigning on the big issues, and Labor's gone for a wedge, a US-style smear campaign and fear campaign. I don't doubt it's an important issue, but I don't think it has a place in Queensland politics. And I don't think that going after a binary situation on what is a very complex issue is up for a state campaign. Look, I think the result will tell itself on Saturday night, and I think the LNP are in for government. I think the change of government's coming, despite the fact that Miles has actually performed really well in this campaign.
I actually have to say that I disagree with you, Campbell, on Stephen Miles's presentation. I thought, no, not you, Cameron, you, Campbell Newman. I thought his presentation in that debate was amateur. He didn't look like a premier. I think when he kept saying he loves the job, well, no one cares if you love the job. Queenslanders care what he's going to do for them. Youth crime, as you just said, Cameron, has been such a major issue. David Crisafulli zeroed in on that in his own question to Stephen Miles. He pointed out that there have been cases where people have been injured or killed because they were out on bail. This is something that is just unforgivable. Campbell Newman.
Look, that's the point I actually am making, and it's like this. If you just had the audio, I think David Crisafulli delivered some really killer blows, apart from not being able to give a quick, succinct answer early in the debate on the abortion thing. And by the way, the problem with it, it's not the issue itself, it's just when people are sitting there at home seeing that sort of exchange, and perhaps that will be shown on the nightly news tomorrow night, it's again playing into this thing about sitting on the fence and just give a straight answer. And that will motivate a bloke who's undecided as much as a woman who cares about the issue. But anyway, the audio has Crisafulli delivering killer blows. But I actually, here's why I do disagree with you. I think Stephen Miles comes across as the daggy dad. He's someone you can relate to. He's awkward. But that's what he's been doing on TikTok and other social media channels for months now. And you know, it's like this, Sharri, it's working. You know, he has improved his position through this campaign. And, you know, I don't want him to improve his position, but it's happening. And I think this could be a lot closer than anybody has thought.